In this videotape, we're going to talk about Java's interfaces. And the best place to find out information about Java's interfaces are either with my kind of Cliff Notes style notes Java's inheritance system, where interfaces are discussed, or else in Java's interface and inheritance tutorial. And if you go there, you'll be taken through a number of pages that talk about Java's interfaces. So, interfaces was something that was kind of new, that was introduced with Java, and they were done in order to handle multiple inheritance, which Java's designers felt was too complicated in C++, and so they did away with it. Basically, multiple inheritance allows you to inherit from multiple superclasses, and it raises a host of issues which we'll discuss in a separate videotape on multiple inheritance. So what is an interface? An interface is a set of methods and constants. And typically an interface is a public set of methods that provides an interface to the outside world. And typically you may hear an interface also called an application programmer interface. So it is the behaviors that we expect a class to implement. So an interface actually represents a type. Okay, so just like we said it was a collection of methods, an interface is equal to a type. And specifically, it is an abstract type because it does not provide any implementation for its methods. It just defines a set of signatures. You've already seen some interfaces in this class. As an example, the list type is an abstract type, and then you can instantiate it with a specific class. So list string, you might say, for example, new array list, because an array list is a specific class that implements a list interface. So you've actually now got the basic idea that interfaces, you can declare variables. In fact, I should have put a variable here. So you can declare a variable to be of an interface type, and then you assign it an instance of a class, a concrete class that implements that interface. So we're going to be talking about a number of things in this lecture, including how to specify an interface, and how to implement one. So first of all, if you want to implement, let's talk about specification first. Typically, you will declare them public. If you leave off public, then it becomes package, and again, we have not yet talked about package. You can't declare them as private or protected. So typically, you say public and use the keyword interface, and then give it a name. We'll declare this one to be an iterator. And then you provide a set of methods that should be implemented by it. So we'll say has next, and one for getting the next object. And you might wonder, well, how do you define type-specific ones or generics? We'll get to that in another lecture. Finally, let's say we allow you to do remove, and maybe we decide there's a maximum size. So maybe or we're going to decide that int max size equals 10. So we're not going to allow more than 10 objects in our iterator. So an important thing to notice here is we did not have to put either the keywords public, final, or static. By default, any variable that you place in an interface is a constant. Okay, so it is constant. You cannot change it. Okay, so that's the way you specify an interface. So then how do you specify that a class implements one? Pretty simply, you just say class, say list, implements iterator. So you can see that you put the implements before the function or before the class body, and it can implement more than one interface, so it would be a comma separated list. And you could also have it extend, so in this case it might be extending some superclass implements a set of interfaces. So to give you some real-world examples, let's go and take a look at the list interface for Java, and you can see that it actually is a sub-interface. You're allowed to have that in Java, just like you can have super and subclasses. So the list interface actually extends the collection. So you can see down here that it actually says public interface list extends collection. Okay, so that makes it a sub-interface of collection. And you can also see that it is implementing a number of, or not implementing, but a number of classes implement it. Now let's show you an actual example with using some interfaces. So we're going back to our trusty map example from a few lectures back, and this example is going to, let's just run it first so you can see what it's going to do. It's basically taking a series of people and their salaries, and it's first sorting them by last name and breaking ties between them with first name. So you can see here there's 3 Roushes, and they are sorted in alphabetical order by first name. And then the second thing I did is I sorted the list by salaries. So you can see in the second one they're in increasing order by salaries. So let's take a look at it. And we have, first of all, a class employee, and we're having it implement a interface called comparable. And you'll notice that interfaces can be generic too. So here we have to specify specifically that it's implementing a comparable of employees. And the comparable interface has one method. It is the compare to method. And you'll notice that here we do have to declare the methods public. You may remember that if you go back to our example, I did not have to declare any of the methods public, because as soon as I declared them public, the interface public, all the methods became public. But in the class itself, we have to declare it as public. And in this case, we're simply first comparing the 2 last names, and if they're equal, we return a comparison of the first names of the 2 employees. If the last names are not equal, we return a comparison of the last names. So that's an example of how we are implementing a interface. We'll show you another example in a moment. Coming down here, we have created a tree map of employees, and the key is employee because we're not comparing just last names, we also may be comparing first names. So we have a multi-valued key, and so therefore we have to specify employee is both the key and the value for this map. I created a number of sample employees, and then you can see I iterate through them right here and print them out, and the map will use that compare to method in order to compare them because it expects any key to support the comparable interface. That's how it knows how to compare keys. I promised you a second example, and here it is. So we then go through that map and we print the employees in ascending order by salary. So how do we do that? Well, you can see first that we have created a list object, or a list, but list, remember, is an interface, and we actually have to create a instance of a concrete class, so we create an array list here. And then we're going to sort that list, and here's a second example of an interface, the Comparator Interface. It has a single method called compare, and here's an example where we create an anonymous class, and an anonymous class is specified in line. It will be compiled into a class file associated with this particular class, and a single instance will be created here. So here we are creating a instance of comparator, and we're actually creating an anonymous class with a method compare that returns the difference between the two employees' salaries. So that's how we're comparing them, and then we're able to loop through our sorted list and print them out. So this videotape has given you a quick introduction to Java interfaces, and the important thing to remember is that a Java interface is really an abstract type, and you can declare a variable to be of an interface type, and then you can assign a concrete object to it that implements that particular interface.